happy Homebrew Wednesday. I know I'm posting this video on a Wednesday, but I'm treating it more like a the brewed palette update. But I will start off with my homebrew updates, and then I have a bunch of craft beer updates to go along with it. So, should note first, filming this on my webcam just so I can get it up on Wednesday, because I'm going to another beer event tonight, which I'll talk about in the craft beer section of this video. So let's get going. So I'm just going to go in order of the tour that I gave you last week of my apartment on Homebrew Wednesday, just to make it easier. So you can go, if you haven't seen that video, you can go back and watch it, and then you'll see what I mean as I go beer to beer. So we'll start at the far end of my apartment, farthest from the kitchen. So we had my two saisons, the Wild Saison, which is my Imperial Rye Saison, Seven Blessings Saison, with apricots and Brettanomyces bruxellensis, and that is still aging, obviously, so there's not really any updates on that. It's going to take at least another month to really show a huge difference, because the apricots have to descend in order to form a pellicle. So we'll see what happens with that. Then the Farmhouse Pale Ale, which is really a saison, because the yeast, in saisons, play such a big role that even though I put Galaxy and Tannum hops into the boil, when I've been tasting samples, it really just tastes like a really good, clean saison. Now, last week I said that there was a big sulfur note, and there was, but after, like I said, after swirling it up like I did with my rye saison, and leaving it for another week at warm temperatures, in this case room temperature, the sulfur is basically gone. So I added 1.5 ounces of Galaxy and 1 ounce of a Tannum in on Monday night, to make sure that I have some kind of American Pale Ale, fruitiness to the aroma and hopefully the flavor too, so that I can call it a Farmhouse Pale Ale and not just a hoppy saison, even though they're kind of interchangeable, because I kept the ABV around 5.5%, purposely for it to keep it, drinkable, just like a saison could be, and of course an American Pale Ale is supposed to be. So that's that. Then moving back down the hall to where my fermentation chamber is, we have my Mosaic Wet Hopped IPA, which also has some Centennial in it. So that's fermenting great. I haven't taken any samples yet, but I usually like to wait 2 weeks to take a sample anyway. So that's fermenting well, smelling great. I've been smelling the blow-off jar non-stop. It just smells so good, and those Mosaic hops give it that big, juicy, tropical fruit aroma. I even had my wife get down and pull out the blow-off jar a little bit and smell it, because it just smells awesome. And so in terms of when that's going to be ready within the next week or so, I'll probably do it a 2.5 week primary, just to make sure it's done fermenting and all the hop characters really developed. And really, that really does depend, though, on when my keg of oatmeal brown ale kicks. Even though, and I'm trying to, have friends over to help me finish that. It's good, but I had a little fiasco this past weekend where I was away for the Jewish New Year holiday and at my parents' house in Jersey, and I came back Sunday evening to find that all my CO2 had leaked out somehow. I thought I checked everything before I left, and I don't know what happened, but I lost the CO2, pretty much a full tank. Of course, it was my first keg on the tank, and everything seemed okay. But apparently there was a leak somewhere that I didn't tighten well, and I suspect that it was the gas inline, because I remember tightening it before I left, and maybe I didn't tighten it well enough. So I lost that. So luckily, on Monday, I had time to run down to a place that swaps out tanks for $19 instead of like $25 that my homebrew stores do. And I swapped it out, hooked it up, made sure everything was okay. Of course, I'm as a newbie to kegging, I was a little neurotic with it, but I think it's holding really well now, and I keep tightening everything once or twice a day, like just checking it just to make sure everything is nice and solid. And I even disassembled the gas inline and you cleaned it, sanitized it, and lubed it just to make sure before I retightened it, just to make sure everything was good. Did my leak tests and yada yada yada. So it should be good, but overall, I've been puzzled with that beer the whole time because it doesn't really taste like a brown ale. It really just tastes like a generic, rich, malty, creamy ale, instead of a brown ale, which I'll have to figure out why, next time I brew it or when I taste the Pilsner, if something's changed, I'll have to do a diagnosis on my Keyser if there's problems with that beer. But I really shouldn't be because I cleaned the keg and sanitized it, but I'm just a little neurotic with my Keyser until I really get the pipeline going and have had a good amount of beers pass through the kegs and the whole system just to get used to a totally new venture in homebrewing, which is kegging. So that's that, and then lastly, my next beer is going to be my English barley wine because, once I carbonate the Pilsner, which I think I'll be dry hopping again because I may have dry hopped it with Styrian Goldings instead of Saphir. So I might be doing that again. And, after, because this Thursday, tomorrow is going to be 4 weeks of lagering. And I was planning on doing 5 weeks. So for the last week of it, or last few days of the 4.5 to 5 weeks, I'm probably going to dry hop it again just to make sure that it has a good aroma. It's supposed to be a hoppier Pilsner. Once that's on tap, and then the IPA is carboning also, then I won't need to have another beer in the waiting right away. So I'm going to brew my English barley wine next. And then, and this, I'm not going to oak it this time. And of course, when I brew it, I'll show you the recipe and you'll have a better idea of how I tweaked it from last year more than just not oaking it. But that's that. And then now we're going to go on to some craft beer updates. I just want to show you 2 magazines that I subscribe to, one of which I think only Americans can get, but it's still worth showing, is Zymergy magazine. If you're a member of the Homebrewers Association, you get it as part of your membership fee. Otherwise, a lot of homebrew shops usually carry it. And then before I signed up for the AHA, I was buying it at Bitter and Esther's. Every time I would go there and see a new issue, I'd buy one. But now I signed up. It's not too expensive. I actually pull out my wallet to show you that when you sign up, you also get a nice American Homebrewers Association membership card, and you get discounts on different websites, and usually your homebrew store gives you a 5 to 10% discount, so it's pretty cool. So it's a great magazine, great articles, always has lots of recipes for you to brew, and in my case, lots of recipes for me to use as inspiration for my own recipes, because as you know, I don't like using, textbook recipes, unless I'm going to put another twist on it with the hops or the yeast. I like making my own recipes that are inspired by other recipes that I've read about or, seen on the forums and stuff like that. And then the second magazine is Brew Your Own magazine. And it's a really awesome magazine, and I definitely recommend it. And in terms of craft beer magazines, because I'm supposed to be giving you craft beer updates now, I'm thinking about subscribing to All About Beer magazine. My friend and famous beer writer John Hull has recently become one of the editors-in-chief of the magazine. I ordered the trial issue, and if I like it, then I'm definitely going to subscribe to it. I've read it before, and I know it's good, but I just want to get another issue and sit and read it, pay it cover to cover, and then decide whether I want to pay the subscription fee. But it's definitely a really good one, and I would definitely recommend it. In terms of craft beer adventures this week, first on Monday, after going to swap out my CO2 tank, I went to Whole Foods in Columbus Circle in Manhattan, 59th Street, because they have like a bar there where you can get growlers, and and it's like a normal bar. They have like 10 beers on tap. You can get bottles there. And at first I looked through their retail section, in the retail section of the store, because they have a separate liquor license, and I picked up the Almanac Brewing's IPA because I really liked it when I tried it at the event where I interviewed Jesse Friedman, the brewmaster. And then I also picked up the 2014 vintage of Firestone Walker's Velvet Merkin, which is a bourbon barrel-aged oatmeal stout. I wasn't blown away by it last year when they first released it in bottles, but apparently this year there's more barrel character, so hopefully it'll be good. And then the main reason I really went there was to see if they had any of the sours from Almanac. So luckily they had the Cerise Sour Blonde, which was one of my favorites from the event. They also had the Dark Pumpkin Sour, which I liked, but not enough to spend $11 on a bottle. And they had the Heirloom Pumpkin Barley Wine, which I was thinking of buying, but I'm not a huge pumpkin ale fan, and I wasn't, even though it could probably age well and really bring out some more barley wine notes. I had a small taste of it at the event, and I wasn't blown away, so, maybe down the line I'll buy a bottle, but for now, wasn't so compelled to buy a bottle. Then, lastly, after having in terms of my adventure at Whole Foods, after having a pint of Green Flash West Coast IPA, which I know is a double IPA, really enjoying it. I got to chatting with a couple people there about beer and developing your palate and stuff like that. I recommended to a woman there to try a Saison because she was looking for another beer that was light but yet crisp and refreshing and not too heavy like some craft beers can be. So they had a Saison called Indian Farmhouse from the Commons Brewery, which I believe is in San Francisco. And last week I tried one of their beers and really liked it. So we shared that beer and we got into a great craft beer discussion. So if you can get the Saisons or any beers from the Commons Brewery at San Francisco, I would definitely recommend it. I'm definitely going to be trying to review some of their beers and maybe even do a Skype interview with their brewer because both of them have been blown away. And as I mentioned earlier, with the sulfury note, I smelled a little bit of it in the Indian Farmhouse from the Commons Brewery. So I know that sometimes Saison use can produce that, along with the earthy, barnyardy aroma, can be a touch of sulfur. So I know that if my Saison yeasts from the East Bay are producing that, then it's not the worst thing in the world in the end of the day. My next brewer interview will hopefully be Bill Kowaleski from Victory Brewing Company out of Downingtown and now also Parksburg, Pennsylvania. I've interviewed him in the past for my previous blog. You're not going to be able to find those interviews. So now that he's built another brewery and expanded, and they posted at the event the information about the event, they said that he's going to be there. I'm going to bring my equipment and hopefully score an interview with him, and that'll be my next brewer interview because nowadays I'm trying to diversify my blog and make sure to post as much craft beer stuff as possible, along with the main focus, which is, of course, the Brewed Pal, which is brewing beer. Filming this in the morning, so I'll cheers you out with my coffee, and I'll see you in the next Brewed Pal video. Cheers, and happy homebrewing.